I'm Nick, and this is the Lockerstor Lockerstor 6 Gen 3. This is a 6-bay NAS with 4 additional M.2 slots for caching and other fun stuff, as well as dual 10 gigabit Ethernet, dual 5 gigabit Ethernet, and dual USB 4. However, the USB 4, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. But I had an idea the other day when I was in the shower. This is generally where I get all of my ideas. I was thinking to myself, we have very small amounts of storage compared to stuff like this inside of our desktop PCs. What if you wanted to put your entire Steam library on it, but not use this as network storage? How would that work? Well, I have a solution.
Check this out. Take a look at this.
I'm going to introduce you guys to something called Skuzzy. It's technically on the network, but your computer treats it as if it's physically inside your PC.
There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided,
yeah, let me teach you some stuff today.
This video is brought to you by VIPSCDkey.com. Have you ever installed Windows 11 only to see the watermark of death? You don't need to fork out a couple of $100s for a key. You can grab one from today's video sponsor, from VIPSCDkey.com for a tenth of the price. You can use our code GEAR to get 30% off for this month only. How good is that? That takes that already cheap Windows 11 key and makes it even cheaper. It's easy as placing your order. Bingo bango. You've got your new key on your orders page. You chuck that key into the activation screen and you're good to go. No more watermark of death. Use code GEAR to get 30% off for this month only. Link in the description. On with the video. Back to you, Nick.
Before we go to school, I just want to shout out to Segate. They sent us a whole stack of 10 terabyte drives for a bunch of projects that we've got coming up, and I decided to use the Ironwolf Pro 10 terabyte drives in here. Not sponsored by Segate, I'm just letting you know that they did send us a whole bunch of drives for the purposes of making more storage-based content for you guys. And yeah, Segate, more drives please. All you need to get started is at least a 10 gigabit network link. This is not exclusive to Lockerstor NAS devices. This would be if you had a true NAS setup, or basically any way that you wanted to try out doing Skuzzy on your own. The reason why I'm doing Lockerstor is because it's an off-the-shelf product and it's super easy to configure, as you're about to find out. I would almost say that you'd be okay using 5 gig as well. But because we have 10 gig here in the studio, we're going to be doing 10 gig things. And look, only one 10 gig link, that's all we need. With Lockerstor NAS devices, it will only allow you to use exe4 or Btrfs. Where's ZFS support? Come on guys, QNAP's doing it, give us ZFS. Hopefully the more I talk about it, the more likely it is for them to implement ZFS. I've also got 4 1TB M.2s as a cache setup because that's what I had spare. I had 4 of these and I was like, you know what, let's just whack it in, make this as fast as possible, because this Lockerstor Gen 3 does support 4 M.2 drives as well. I guess the whole point of this is to show you what you could do if you had an off-the-shelf NAS. However, I am aware that 10 gig networking isn't really widely available for everybody. So yeah, this is just to cure my own curiosity, because this is something I haven't really done before. I haven't really had a need to do this before. So let's game on a NAS, I suppose. If we take a look at the network properties, we can see that we've got our full 10 gig link and the IP address we're going to use to connect with Skuzzy and the MTU. Now you can change this if you like. You can change this to 9,000 if you're using jumbo frames across your network, but if you're not tweaking your entire network, I would probably just leave this at a 1500 MTU because it can cause some issues, but 1500 is absolutely fine. All right, here's an Skuzzy crash course. Click on the storage manager. You'll then want to click on Skuzzy create. And when we create it, we're going to go Skuzzy target with 1 LUN. We'll name it games. We'll click next. And then we're going to set up no authentication, then click next. We're going to create a new Skuzzy LUN. We're going to call it games. We're going to set it up as 4,000 gigabytes or close to 4 terabytes. We're going to click next and then finish. And then that's it. We're done. Now we're going to connect to that new Skuzzy LUN. As you can see here, the LUN is available and it is 3.91 terabytes and it's mounted, ready for action. Connecting to Skuzzy in Windows is really easy. Just open the start menu, type in Skuzzy, put in the IP address of your NAS or your storage device, You want to then click Quick Connect, and then it's going to detect everything that is required to connect to that iSCSI target. Click OK, and then OK again, and we're ready to go. You don't have to worry about any of these other options. It should just work right out of the box with no issues whatsoever. Then we'll want to create a new partition. The way this works is iSCSI treats that new connection as a physical disk. So whatever file system that you format this as is the file system of your iSCSI drive. It connects it as a physical drive. It's not like a physical drive. It is a physical drive over the network. I hope this is making sense to you guys. This is not some type of software trick. This is how storage works in a data center. As another quick explainer for iSCSI, as you'll see here, the D drive, which is the games partition that I just formatted, is connected as a physical drive, and it's not connected as a network volume, and you'll see all of the network locations or network volumes are below. Again, not some crazy software trick. This is just how storage works, which means if you're using an operating system which does not support that partition type, when you connect to that iSCSI LUN, you will not be able to see that partition. You'll have to reformat it to a file system that is accessible by that operating system. Because we're only playing with Windows in this video, NTFS will be fine. I guess I should answer, when is not a good time to use something like iSCSI in a setup like this? As I've already mentioned, if you have a multiple operating system environment, it's generally not good practice to do that, especially, let's say for instance, you game on Windows, you do all your content creation or productivity on a Mac. The limitation is going to be the file system, whereas if this was straight up network attached storage, this box right here, this is not just exclusive to Asus, or this is with any of the other vendors that make this stuff. All of the heavy lifting for any of the file system operations is being done on the NAS. So the file system itself doesn't really matter. It's rather about how you connect to the storage. Such a Linux nerd, always wanting to use NFS when you don't need to. If you connected the iSCSI target to your Windows PC first, and let's say you've got a Mac on your network, when you connect to that target and open it up as a new partition, you have to format as a file system, so it's going to be NTFS. If you theoretically could do the same thing on a Mac, you don't get all of the features that Windows has with NTFS on macOS unless you use a third-party application or a third-party driver like NTFS 3G. I don't know, it's been a while since I've used NTFS on macOS, so maybe I'm wrong, but one thing I'm right about is iSCSI support on macOS as a whole. It is basically non-existent anymore for the past couple of years. Global SAN doesn't work anymore. The way that Apple gives developers low-level access to the kernel for things like block storage is now non-existent. Especially with Apple Silicon, everything changed the way they give you kernel-level access for drivers. If you want to connect that iSCSI target to a Linux machine, you shouldn't have too much of a problem considering there's lots of different drivers and ways to get NTFS to work in Linux. Well, lots of distros just include support for it now anyway. Keep in mind that if you are wanting to do the same kind of setup between Windows and Linux, Linux binaries are not compatible with Windows and vice versa. So yeah, there is that. It's also worth mentioning that if you connect this to another machine, as I'm showing here, it will allow you to connect to the same iSCSI storage, and it will still treat it as a locally connected drive. However, the drive is now shared as physical drives across multiple machines. Right here, it's connected to my editing PC, and you'll see that it also comes up exactly like a physically connected disk to this system. If I go to Properties, and I go to hardware, you'll see again, it has this connected like a physical drive. The main thing with iSCSI is what's happening is when you format the block storage device with iSCSI, the client does some of the file system heavy lifting because the client treats the drive as if it's physically attached to it. So a lot of those operations happen on the client. If you want to go another level deeper, depending on how the iSCSI implementation was developed, a lot of the time, especially with these type of NAS devices, it's not straight up block storage. It's a hard file that sits on the storage that treats itself as block storage. That's a whole nother video, that's a whole nother topic, and I can speak for hours about block storage, but we're not going to do that.
All right, Nick, but how fast is it? Well, it's as fast as your 10 gigabit network link. As you can see here, I'm using Crystal Disk Mark with the preset for mechanical drives, and then this is the preset for NVMe M.2 SSDs. And because we have cache drives, it will run as fast as possible. Keep in mind that because we have cache drives, it should technically be able to load games very quickly based on the games that you play all of the time. Which leads into one of Steam's most interesting features, and that's being able to add additional storage locations. This used to be a bit of a pain in the butt with Steam, but you can see here, we can add that Skuzzy target. If you have games that are already installed, you can then move them to that storage, and this just makes it so much easier in Steam now. I like that this has just been integrated rather than you having to go and then discover the files on another volume. You can just move them and away we go. Now we're going to install Call of Duty because you guys know, or maybe you don't, I'm a sweaty Call of Duty nerd. Going to install that straight to the D drive. This is a clean install on Steam. I don't really play the Steam version of the game, but I do own it. We hit install and away we go. You can just see it downloading in all of its speed and all of its glory. And then we're going to show you what the differences are in load times for both using it on the M.2 drive on the machine itself and using it over the network.
When is a good time to use something like this? That's the main question. Well, a good time is exactly like this use case here. Or if you want to go further, let's say for instance, you have a house, you've got a bunch of gamers in your house. Every client has 10 gigabit Ethernet, which I know is a bit unrealistic, but it's possible. It's okay, it's possible. And you wanted to centralize all of the storage on something like Steam. Very, very easy to do. You could have one of the client machines download everything, and then on all the other clients, you just say, hey, all the games are connected on this drive here, and then it just treats it as a local drive. So when Steam does its scan for games, it just thinks it's on that local drive anyway, which is kind of a nice way of having all of your network storage sorted. But be aware, there are some limitations to Skuzzy, but honestly, nothing that you have to think about consciously if you're doing any type of setup like this. You just don't need to worry about it. It's if you go bigger, on a much bigger scale. Yeah, this is definitely like not really a large scale deployment. This is just a bit of fun, a bit of curiosity, and something that I've been thinking about a bit since I had that shower thought.
If you're playing Call of Duty, don't worry about this message that says we detected you have installed the game on an HDD. Playing Call of Duty on an SSD is recommended to enjoy it at its best. What they don't know, guys, won't hurt them. Definitely not a regular hard disk setup. The first test is an important one. We're going to start the counter as soon as it's ready to load in. Essentially, we're loading into a game of Warzone to see what those load times are like. We're going to do this in real time, and I want you guys to really pay attention to what's going on here. As you're about to find out, the load times between using an internal PCIe Gen 5 NVMe M.2 SSD and spinning Rust drives over 10 gigabit Ethernet with SSD cache is, there's really not a huge difference. And to me personally, I'm not surprised given that I know that when you have a setup like this, it's going to completely max out the network link and, you know, it's going to be faster than most 2.5-inch SSDs directly connected to your system. Look at that. Very, very quick. Now, here's something else to keep in mind too. I just wanted to let the clip run for a bit. You'll notice that all of the assets load in perfectly fine. There is one last small bit of, let's say, latency when it comes to loading when you're using an Skuzzy NAS, and the load time is so minuscule that you probably won't even notice it. But if you take a look at the cutscene in the plane, the M.2 SSD internally is maybe 5 or 10 frames ahead. But other than that, the load times here are kind of unbelievable if you've never seen something like this before.
The main thing is load times are going to be the things that people care about the most. And the next thing is stability. So we saw with that Warzone load-in test that the difference in time was about 4 seconds, which when you think about it, for a game like Warzone, is not really that significant whatsoever. You have to remember, Warzone, the map is so massive and there's so many assets being loaded in. The fact that it can do that without any hitches is really freaking cool. One limitation to this is if you've got 6 clients hitting this at exactly the same time, that's when you need to plug in those other links and put in some load balancing and cross your fingers and hope that it's stable. But I think for a home setup, using iSCSI is actually pretty doable. Okay, so we know what the load times look like. How does it handle streaming all of the data in something like Warzone on a huge map like Verdansk? Let me show you. Look, I'm not just looking for excuses to play Call of Duty while I'm supposed to be working on videos, guys. I think this is really interesting stuff, believe it or not. But I also get to play Warzone.
You want to know the funniest thing, guys? After rendering this video, uploading the video, and watching the video after it was uploaded, I'd noticed that the gameplay footage in OBS, the recording itself, was corrupted. So this is the angle that I'm going to have to show you. I'm a bit annoyed because the gameplay that I captured for this video was really, really good. On the upside though, you can see how smooth the game is being played over iSCSI. It's just a shame that that recording is corrupt. You'll notice right from the jump that it doesn't look or feel any different than if you were gaming off an internal drive. It really makes no difference where your files are saved, and especially with games like Warzone, as I've already mentioned, massive map, lots of game assets, lots of data streaming happening, a lot of disk activity all of the time with a game like this. And realistically, doesn't matter where the files are, as I said, this game works beautifully. And this will be the case with basically every other game for a setup like this.
This dance will be your last. Do I look like somebody you'd want to mess with? Change your mags. Change your mags.
I'm honestly just so bummed that this file is corrupted and that I had to come back to this video like 7 hours later to do another voiceover. I'm disappointed, guys, because the result of this testing was really, really good. It's just a shame that not everything goes to plan with tech.
Man, this feels really good, by the way. I should just do this for a bit longer. Oh, let us know if you guys learned anything. Nothing in this video for me was a head scratcher at all. I knew exactly how this was going to go down, given that I know the robustness of iSCSI, and I knew that it could pull it off and give you really fast speeds. Maybe you learned that doing this kind of setup can be faster than a drive sitting inside your physical PC. I love doing stuff like this, and it kind of reminds me of why I got into tech and PCs and everything in the first place many years ago. And that's because if there is something you can think of and if there is something you can imagine, most of the time there is a solution for that when it comes to technology. How cool is that? Everyone's always had the exact same thought when it comes to developing technology. It just happens at a different time in slightly a different way. And then it can all be implemented by you for free, yay! Because the reality of all of this is, this isn't limited to Acerstore. Even though Acerstore sent this out for review, I thought to myself, you know what? I don't want to review a NAS. That's really boring. I want to use it for something cool. And that's what we did with the Lockerstor 6 Gen 3. Well, at least that's what I think. But if you wanted to do this with TrueNAS or a NAS that you built yourself or any other type of storage device, any other vendors that support iSCSI, you can do exactly the same thing. So yeah, this is not exclusively for this NAS whatsoever. But I will say, shout out to Segate for sending drives for this, because yeah, without them, stuff like these little shower thoughts that I have, they don't exist.